In this video, I've got an expert from each region, and we're going to be giving you a preview of Masters Shanghai.
EMEA is winning Shanghai?
It's literally in the city that they're playing in. It's in mostly the venue that they're playing in. Like, China are winning Shanghai.
Well, I don't know why I have to say this because it's so obvious, but Pacific is winning Masters Shanghai.
America's gonna win Shanghai. Let's go, baby!
What teams are your region sending to Shanghai?
G2, Leviathan, and 100 Thieves.
So we're sending like the Fnatic, Heretics, and Footballist.
Sending Paper X, Gen G, and then T1, which is probably a bit of the wild card there, but those are the three teams we're sending.
We're sending EDG and FPX for one, the two teams that we sent from Madrid that I don't like, probably underperformed, like at least in my expectations and probably everybody else's. But we're also sending a little team called Dragon Ranger Gaming.
How would you rank the three teams you're sending from 1 to 3?
I think the Fnatic is gonna be the first one. I would put the Heretics on the second one because they have a sub, like, and Minibu is not gonna play, and the duelist really can affect on them. So I would like to put the Footballist on the second, like the top two, and the top three is gonna be Heretics.
Well, third we'll put DRG. I think most people that would do a tier list would put DRG at the bottom of just all of the teams in the leagues, right? Like, out of the 12 teams attending, I think you'd be mad to put DRG anywhere other than 12. Not because they're like a terrible team way behind people, but just they lack the experience. I think they lack the ability to like sort of play around international teams very well, and they're very susceptible to being anti-stratted. I think that, yeah, EDG, until they are thrown off in like a grand final, you can't say anything other than they are the top team in the region, but I do think that FPX are right behind.
So for me, it's simple, but it might be hot takes. So my number one is 100 Thieves. My number two is G2. And my number three is Leviathan.
So I think I rank these three teams as they finished, right? I think Paper X in first, Gen G in second, and T1 in third. For Gen G and Paper X, I think the fashion in which Paper X won, I think it just locks it in that they continue to be the strongest team in Pacific. And T1, I mean, you know, they looked rocky. So they are definitely the third team here going into Masters Shanghai.
Did any team surprise you by making it to Shanghai?
I think it'll probably have to be the G2 team. I think looking at it, it was most likely G2 to be maybe like fifth or sixth looking at the 11 teams coming through. So for them to make it as the number 2 seed is actually quite amazing.
Not really. We played with the Heretics and Footballist a lot, and I know that they're a really strong team, especially like the Footballist. I don't think that they can show everything what they have on official, like they're playing on scrims. And if we watch the Heretics, they're on opposite side. On scrims, they're playing not that good as an official, and every time when I see how they're playing, they always step up.
Yeah, so like, I definitely didn't expect DRG to be qualifying, but funnily enough, I looked at my pick'ems. Every time I've predicted a game for DRG, I've been wrong.
T1 surprised me during playoff week in the fact that they qualified. But if I think back to the very beginning of Stage 1, I was predicting that they would make it. So it's the journey that they took that surprised me, because in the middle, they really looked like they wouldn't be able to make it in. But I guess, you know, if I'm looking at 3 months ago, 4 months ago, looking at the roster, I was hoping and expecting to see them go to one of the Masters tournaments. So,
in your opinion, has your region sent their best possible teams?
I think right now we have like the best 3 teams, not gonna lie. I saw a lot of games during like the split, and I think they played really stable during the whole split, and they're showing really good results. So yeah, I like to see them free. I think they deserve it.
So I don't think that we've sent the third best team from the region with DRG, but at the end of the day, the results are there that they have been consistently top 4, and they beat Trace not only once to qualify for Shanghai, but a second time in group. So you can't really argue with it. It just doesn't bode me with confidence that we're sending the 3 best teams.
I do think we sent the best teams from Pacific. I know a lot of people are upset about the results overall, but I think at the end of the day, we sent the best teams.
Is there any team from your region that you would swap in place of one of the teams currently attending?
Hot take, Sentinels for Leviathan.
Trace, I think, would be the first. Because Trace have been like a consistently good team since Evolution, like even like stage 1, I think, which was Evolution was the tournament that happened post Champions and then went into Ascension for China. So it was like September, October, November. And Trace were like, I think top 4 in all of those events and even finishing second place in the second like big act of it.
There are a couple teams that would have been fun to see, right? And I think they would have done maybe just as well. So one of them would be Talent. I think Talent Esports, they were starting to really get into the groove and figure out their own color and style. And I would say they are probably the team that showed the most consistent positive, like upwards trend, right? They just continued to improve.
No, I don't think so. I really like these 3 teams. I think they can really show our region on the good side.
From the 3 teams attending from your region, what stands out most about each individual team?
I would say I just make a little research, and I think that Heretics, if you see that they're playing overtimes, they every time win it. Like during this year, it was 7 out of 7 times when they go to overtimes and they're winning. So I think it's kind of their like territory. If you go for overtimes, be careful, they're gonna win you. Footballists, I would say their thing is they like to play from their strong sides and they using different compositions, as we could see Chamber on Split from the CNET, or they use like Deadlock on Sunset. It's really unpredictable what they can use, but they are trying to play out from their strong sides. If you haven't seen it, I think he's one of the best Chambers, in my opinion, and they're using it and they're not scared to do it. And the Fnatic, I don't think that I need to say something about these guys, right? Like they're really insane, and I think it's a time for them to prove it again that they're back. I just hope that they're not gonna repeat the same as I think mistake as we did in Liquid like the previous year. After we win like the tournament, our passion maybe a little bit go lower and we didn't do as hard as we could do on the next tournament. So I hope that they're not gonna repeat the same thing.
I think for EDG, the thing that stands out most to them is just like the role swap and how much that's done for the balance of the team. For FPX, it's the comps. After some of the comps that FPX are cooking up are crazy, but also masterful. On Lotus, they're running triple controller, where they're running Viper, Omen, and Astra, and not running a Killjoy. And then they're running Gecko as a solo initiator too. But it works so well because some of the little plays that they have around paranoias into a stun and how you're fighting for A main works really well. And I think the main one that caught people's attention for FPX was the triple controller again on Icebox, where they're playing Clove. They put life on Clove to sort of fight and go aggressive on A main. If he dies, you can still smoke with Clove's utility. And then they're running Omen Harbor. They're not even running a Viper anymore on either Breeze or Icebox. So I feel like FPX are going to bring out some really good ideas. So for DRG, I think it's just like aim mechanics. Fukashu's just been dumpstering people in China, but he is also playing on a team that's pretty much speaking full Mandarin and then gradually speaking bits of English to him to help him set up. So he's kind of, it feels like the typical Russian cosplay of muting your team and just playing to do what you want, but it's getting better, but you could definitely see that that's still a difficult thing, like a rift in the team.
So let's start with the easy one. Paper Rex, obviously, you know, the color's been there. W Gaming's been their logo through and through since the beginning. I don't think that has changed. But what I will say is I think it's the perfect storm of the meta evolving, them being right at that timing of figuring out their own place in the meta, of figuring, really finding that pacing, right? There's been some metas in the past where Paper X will try to force their W Gaming and it wouldn't quite work out. They would get by with the mechanics, but it wouldn't quite work out. I would say currently they're in a really good place to do so. Then for Gen G, I think Gen G's biggest strength continues to just be the fact that they're really, really strong in the fundamental FPS mechanics, right? Their individual aim, the ability to trade, being in a position to trade. Yeah, sure, they have set plays. They've got some nice util, et cetera, et cetera. But like this feels like a team that you could quite frankly plug into any TAC FPS and they would eventually find their groove. For T1, I'm going to be honest, I don't know what T1's character is. I think this is the brutal honesty.
For 100 Thieves, it's that structure, because even if you're watching on how their communication has been and how their fundamentals has been from training at the beginning of the season until now, like I said, when you're able to see Cryocells be a little bit more free flow, and he could play that style because Busio makes sure that he could play loose, and he's always going to have like 1 or 2 players with him to support or for utility or with their own bodies so they could trade, so that Cryocells can have the most impact as he can, anchoring a certain part or pushing forward. He's not, you don't really see Cryocells kind of like posted up opping anymore, or like as often. He's actually now leading the charge and making sure that he could try to make a certain play in these high, like these hectic moments, and it works out quite well for 100 Thieves. For G2, and like I said, it's not only just on Leaf playing as a Sentinel role, but they also, excuse me, G2 also has a very, very good structure, very similar to 100 Thieves, but I think they're still trying to make it to that point where you're comfortable saying, okay, 100 Thieves could be a good challenger going into winning Masters Shanghai. While for a G2, it's like, we'll have to wait and see if they're able to continue their form from the playoffs of stage 1 to be convinced that they are a cohesive unit, right? And for Leviathan, really, it, like I said, I think it's really on Aspas.
Who is the player to watch from each team?
T1, as much as I love fanboying about Xcurate, his opping is great, and that's a big part of their color, I think it is now very clear that the player to watch from this team at Master Shanghai is going to be Rossi. I think he has actually become the most consistent on this team. I think his shift to flexing a bit more heavily into the flash initiators has really, really helped this team out. I think he really becomes the glue for this team. Genji's tough. I think you could, I think anyone could pick any one of these 5 players and you'd have a reason, right? You'd have a solid logical reason. Personally, though he had a weaker and less stable stage 1, I think I still have to give my boy Meteor a shout here. Yeah, at the beginning of the year and at kickoff, even at Masters Madrid, I've always felt that Meteor's consistency, his adjustment to the Sentinel role, and just his ability to fight and win 1v1s really enabled Gen G to figure out this, style of theirs that's very kind of 4-1 default heavy, things like that. And while, yeah, again, he looked a little bit weaker, I think he got targeted a lot during stage 1 by a lot of the other teams. I still think that Meteor is that guy that's going to bring things back together. Yeah, for Paper X, it really is all 5, isn't it? It really is. If I had to pick one, I will go with Mind Freak. I'm going to go with Mind Freak. Yeah, give another bit of a shout for someone that I think gets overlooked a bit.
For Leviathan, Aspas, right? He's probably still one of the best duelists that we currently have in the world. And in these moments where you need him to step up and the team's having like a slow start, count him in for like the later rounds to really start getting those frags out as well, and just keeping the team alive, at least in the match, to keep it very, very close. For 100 Thieves, I think it's great to see such a resurgence of cryocells over for 100 Thieves, where everybody was kind of like doubting cryocells in the mid-season, or leading up to a point where if you're not playing a map that doesn't allow cryocells to play like a jet, then he's going to be useless for a team. But he has definitely shown in the later stage that he could play so many roles and played very well depending on the map and have great impact on all of these roles. I think 100 Thieves just looks super good as a unit so far. And I could maybe say the same thing for, or a similar thing for G2. I think G2, ever since or actually, you know what? I don't want to take the low-hanging fruit to say that Icy's improving. I just have to say that you have to keep out an eye on Leaf, actually.
Okay.
He's switched out roles at the beginning of the season from a duelist into a sentinel role. This was his choice. It was not like a role issue kind of thing that G2 / the guard had issues in the past, and they're still trying to figure it out. It's Leaf that wanted to play the Sentinel role, and he is killing it.
I think I will give the points to Benji Fischer because
Okay.
I think during this split he becomes better and better from each game to another, and he can really, and I know that he's really doing a lot of hard job behind it. Like he can play during the season like 600 death matches, and I think it's a lot, and not a lot of people will play it. So yeah, I think he can surprise everyone. Footballist, I would take Attack Captain. He's classic, and how he playing on smokes is
Oh
amazing.
no.
Yeah, because if you even they have eco, and you see he has a classic, just don't go on him. Like he can right click,
Liquid
he
learned
can
that.
double click. Yeah, like he's doing amazing job with that. And okay, I will from Fnatic. I will pick Chronicle. Like
No
I
way.
just I just pick my brother. You know, like maybe a lot of people don't underestimate what he's doing, but I really high rated what he's doing for the team, and I think you need to watch how he's doing this dirty job that not a lot of people wants to talk about.
I think though my player to watch for EDG is Smoggy on that controller role, because you watch it and you immediately go, man, I wish that this team worked out to do this earlier. For FPX, I'm going to go for the controller there as well, because Lysor was terrible at Madrid. Like he just had such a bad event. People were calling for his head. I think that FPX were even waiting in the wings with a player called Zishuan, I think, who was like their sixth at the time, that maybe would come in to replace Lysor. But since they made this role adjustment, Lysor's not on like Viper as much. They're on Omen. They're on the main controller role. They're not on Sentinel as much, and it just seems a little bit more comfortable for them. Like, and then for DRG, I think the IGL of Nick. I think that I can't remember the interview as such, but I think he was kind of like dropped into the IGL role. But outside of the big ones of Haodong and Berlin in China, I just said that Hebei, the IGL for Trace, was like one of the best players. And if I'm a JDG or a Billy Billy, I'm looking to pick those guys up in the future. I think Nick is similar. Like he's putting up individual crazy rounds. There was a moment where he got a 1v5 on Icebox, which I'll try and find the clip for you because it's crazy. So yeah, I think that like the way that Nick is pulling this team together, you're looking at Luke as well as a duelist to perform well, and Vukashu obviously, who's been like one of the highest ACS performers each series and map for DRG. But I think that like Nick keeping that team together and managing to make it work is like the player that I hope can sort of call around the opponent and make sure that DRG, as hard as it is to be, are on the same page.
Has any player this split surprised you in terms of their individual performance?
Would.
Okay.
It was, I think it's hard mentally when you go in the middle of the season,
Yeah.
you're gonna go to the team and you don't know how it's gonna be. But it seems like he's really fit the team really well. And it's surprised me because I thought it's gonna be maybe a little bit more struggled when he's gonna join to the team. But yeah, he surprised me in a good way.
I think the best one that comes up to mind immediately is Kesnit for crew this year for stage one in the Americas. Although he's always been a superstar duelist for any team that he's played, either it's been crew or Leviathan or whatever in LATAM. I think this year comes to show where he's found a certain groove where he could still play like a very similar style and pull up the big boy pants and carry the team if he needs to or make his certain plays. But he's definitely a lot more vocal in a sense that he activates the people around with him. And he even said it in his interview after winning a certain game in stage one. He was telling Dan Drya that, you know, I was fighting my own demons in a sense where I'm not necessarily playing for myself anymore, but being more of like a team player to make sure that we're able to succeed as a team. And that shows as well outside of the server, because within rounds when they're winning and whatnot, yeah, I always see this camaraderie between like him and Shy, for example, and you know, hyping players up and making sure that not only he knows that he's the best, but he's surrounded by the best team. And it showed like a night and day performance of crew overall in stage one.
Wisey has been back into the form that he was in at Champs, which he sort of made a name for himself on the international stage with how well he was performing and how much he was judging. But like during Evolution, it was just the eye test. He wasn't up to that level. In fact, I think he was letting his team down a lot. So since then, like Wisey's had a really good year. They've been performing a lot stronger.
Definitely players that caught my eye in a positive way, in a very surprising way. So I think the obvious one that a lot of people are talking about already is Bane, right? Bane comes in last minute to DRX. He suddenly brings up the vibes for DRX. He's putting up numbers for DRX. He's flexing around, playing, agents that we haven't really seen him play before, even in challengers. He surprised me just because I've been so hungry to watch him regularly at the highest level of VCT, just because he's the original kind of trainee for DRX.
Do you expect teams from your region to play the same when attending a Masters event?
For Fnatic, I hope that they will continue to keep all their passion to continue to winning, because it's always hard after you win something, to be on the same level as it was before, because you kind of prove that, hey, we're still here, we are back, and I hope that they will continue to play like they played before. For Heretics, it's obviously right, they don't have Minibu, and Minibu did a lot in their team, and maybe Wood is gonna replace him on duelist role, and Patitic will come back to the support, because I don't think that they will put Patitic on duelist role. But it's no offense to him. And I think about the footballist. Sometimes I think they're overcooking with compositions, like it was in Sunset versus Vitality, in my opinion, because they were really good with their previous comp, like Itoje on Cypher is really insane. I don't think that they need this deadlock on this map, but it's only from my perspective, right? And if they just on some maps keep the things more simple, that is more suits for them, I think they can show maybe even better performance that they showed for qualifying to Masters.
I think FPX will try to play similar to what they've been building up on, but I think that they already seem like one of the teams that, even prior to the Viper nerfs being in the game, they're moving away from Viper anyway. So on maps like Lotus, you could see that change up. Apparently, Berlin said that there was a quadruple controller comp that they were running, which I was feeling it was going to be on Lotus, because they run triple controller there, and then you take life off the Rays and put them on Clove. So this is a team that's definitely been sat on a lot of ideas. So playing the same comps, probably not. I think they're going to try and bring out some Hail Mary approaches. I would want EDG to sort of stay and play the same. Just keep it very structured. Add into your defaults, add into your execute, sure. I don't want EDG to go into an event and go, all right, let's say that we're playing up against G2, because they went through the Swiss stage, that we're going to change our playstyle based on what G2 are doing, because I don't think that that's helpful game plan. The DRG, they could either play super nervous, or they could be super in your face and super aggressive. I think that they are just going to be a team that's going to try and fight a lot, and would feel better if they win some of those duels and feel confident and then get under the skin of their opponents, or they're just going to lose those fights and be out-stratted, and it's just going to fall off a cliff.
Well, I will say, I hope to dear goodness that T1 does not play like they have been throughout stage 1, because then they would just become so unpredictable and it would lead to a lot of heartbreak. So I just hope that T1 plays consistently. It doesn't even matter if it's not even about wins or losses. I just hope that they play consistently. But outside of that, I think Gen G should bring out a bit of a new look. I think they have to. If they are going to this tournament to win, which obviously every team that's going should be, I would be very surprised if Gen G came in with a bit more of a lax attitude of, oh, we can get by with our fundamentals. Obviously on certain maps, you don't want to show all your cards right away if you're in the Swiss stage. I understand that. But at the same time, there are some changes coming into the patch, things like that. And Gen G, now the entire world knows, right? No one's being taken by surprise about how fast their retakes are, about how fast their backup is, their rotations, about the lurks. It's all been read through and through. And when you're at a Masters event, you're not going to be as dominant in terms of just pure firepower either. So I want to see Gen G bring out new things. I think they will, and I think they absolutely have to. For Paper Rex, maybe not as much. Maybe not as much as some people thought. I think they already made some of the changes that they're hoping to make going into Shanghai, right? With figuring out their Lotus comp, things like that. So maybe not as much craziness as people would hope from PaperX.
I definitely do think that for 100 Thieves, it's going to be the same. You already have Busio that's comfortable on the master stage. He's won a champs. You have a core around 100 Thieves, being Bang, Asuna, and Cryocells. They've been used to playing on the big stage as well. They've played champs. Back when Pearl was like the North American map, I do remember them beating Fnatic on that as well with a brand new roster coming in. Like, they know what it takes to play in high stakes against very tough opponents too. I think they may be some land jitters. I love it for the core of that team. It's very similar to we're finally back here on the stage since like Masters Reykjavik of 2021, where unfortunately them as the guard kind of like bombed out. And they've always been like in a learning experience, waiting for that chance to prove themselves again. And I think that they're able to do it. But they're also a team that runs on a lot of momentum. So if it comes to a point where they finally made it back to the stage and they're like, hey, we have to prove a point, we have an opportunity to do it now, and it starts to slip already at the very beginning when you're already at a high, this might be something that hits them at a certain, like they hit a wall at a certain point where it might not look the same and players might have to do individual takes, and then it just becomes something that's not good in terms of the end result. And for Leviathan, I expect them to play even better going into master stage versus stage one, because stage one, they going into stage one, they were probably placed to be top 2, if not the best team going into stage one. Yet you've qualified to Masters as the number 3 seed. Whereas again, that cohesion that you're waiting to see out of Leviathan was not there at the very beginning, but they're finally able to turn it around, but not necessarily at the peak I think that they want them to be.
If you had to pinpoint a weakness of each team within your region, what would you say it is?
Ooh, I think for EDG, it is just how lost they can look when things aren't going well. I think that it's a team that can afford to slow down a little bit. One of my biggest criticisms for EDG at Masters was they could find like the first kill against Loud on like Icebox. I remember against Loud, where they like Chichi would find the first kill in mid because he's lurking and fighting mid, and then immediately we'd see like Howdong and the rest of the team that was sort of default and played towards B main, just peek out in B main, like, let's go, go, go. And they just peek into like Sadak, who kills 2 of them. So like, I'm just worried about like FPX playing the occasion and not the game. DRG, worried about a lot of stuff for them. I think Luke is a really good duelist. Like, and for me, he often needs like a map to get going. Like Luke will start off slow, but the second map or third map, it would improve as he went along. If he has a good start, then he's amazing. If he has a bad start, he could be going like 2 and 10 into a half, right? Like that's
like for Footballist overcooking, right? For Fnatic, I think it's a slow start. I don't know if we compare to them to previous year. On previous year, they always have 1 map or 2 maps that you know that if they're gonna play this map, they're gonna 100% win it, like Lotus or Icebox. And during this year, we don't see it. So I think it's maybe like the slow start if it's their weakness. Yeah, they come back like when they play versus Heretics, but what if it's gonna be best of 3, 2-0, and you can't come back already?
True.
So I think it's their weaknesses in that side. For Heretics, it's hard to say. It's really hard to say because they every time changing the player, they're abusing honeymoon period, I guess, every time they find out, like this key how to use it during the whole season, and okay, we need the guy who can't play right now. Okay, we're using this after we have a guy who need to go to the school. Okay, and there, I think they find out the key how to make the honeymoon period for longer than 1 month or 2 months.
PaperX, I think their biggest weakness is the fact that they have always been so dominant mechanically in a lot of their matches, even at these international tournaments, that I think when they get stopped a little bit, whether it's purely in 1v1s or because the other team's reading the rotations and positions better and they're better set up for trades, I think they start to kind of greed for kills and start to overheat unconsciously. For T1, honestly, given what we've seen and given what we know, I think currently it's that Xcurit's calling isn't as fluid as it needs to be, and probably as well as it could be. I think it's still a bit of a flow chart. So whether it's, whether it's targeting Xcurit a bit and making his life a bit harder, or, whether it's just real. I think T1's a team that you can really read the VODs and get a very good idea of what you're up against. And then for Gen G, man, Gen G, if they play a similar style, I think you can really position yourself to basically pick and choose if you want to target texture or meteor. I think that's probably the easier tell that you can have.
To be honest, hot take, 100 Thieves, no weaknesses. G2, momentum based, and hopefully they're going to be able to adapt to that type of pressure. And Leviathan, like I said, it's there's a little bit of deadlifting that needs to be done by anchor players like King, and Aspas as a duelist. I think now is just firepower that needs to that's on paper really good, that just needs to show themselves at that point. And it's the other three for me. It's Mazzino, Com, and Tex. If they're able to shoot all together at the same time for that day, they'll look really good. But it's always been like either or. There's been some games where Aspas maybe doesn't drop 37 or 32 rather, but then Com and Tex are just owning on their end too. So they kind of like balance themselves through. But if they're all able to be at that level as to the reason why they were signed to join Leviathan in the first place, then they're going to be a hard-hitting team.
How would you rank the 4 regions currently playing in the VCT?
I think I've already drank the Kool-Aid enough to talk about America, so we know why they're going to be at the top.
Yeah.
The reason why I think Pacific are going to be are the second one is because I strongly believe that Paper X are going to be in that top 3, just on the teams that they're setting. And I think Gen G, they also maybe had they were like kind of up and down during Pacific for that stage 1, but we've seen what they could do looking at Masters Madrid. So we know the potential that they could bring, and I think they on that stage, if they're already used to that as well, and they've made it to the grand finals last time in Madrid, they could be a heavy contender going into Shanghai. China, home proud buff.
Okay.
Home proud buff. If teams like Billy in the past that weren't in their home turf could beat teams like Energy,
they could be an America's team. Yeah, I agree.
but an America's team that had an EMEA player that played for Navi, that plays for Navi.
All right, cool.
I'm not saying it's because EMEA is bad. I'm just saying because the other teams and the other regions are better.
I would say the first region is gonna be NA.
Okay.
I would say, in my opinion, their adapting skill in terms of macro and micro are better than the other regions right now. If we compare like the old teams, not only like special one, and it's really what makes them, and also like individually in some micro moments they're really strong. So that's why I put them on the first seat in the ranks, right? The second I will put like Perex, and after I will put EMEA. I can say because Perex is like it's not their even if they're representing like the Pacific region, they're not playing like the other teams, right? So you can say,
Okay.
oh, this team.
So
because
there's
of
now
this team,
5
they're playing the
regions.
same. Yeah. So after I put EMEA, after Pacific, and after like China region.
I would lean towards Americas, which is crazy. I know a lot of people have sort of rated 100 Thieves really highly, and the argument has been like, have they done anything to show that and prove that? Because G2 and Leviathan have been scrappy in places. From what I've seen, I've not watched a huge amount of either of them, but I think even before the Viper and Cypher nerfs, I think Anders said it, and I agree with it. Of just like they have the best read on where the meta's going, with stuff like the Gecko Fade on Bind, even like the Gecko Silver. I think on Sunset is a really interesting idea. So I think Americas is probably at the top. Pacific probably just below, and then EMEA is I think China's the worst out of the 4 regions. Like despite us sending like consistent teams, but I think that like what I've seen out of Foot and Team Heretics especially, and then obviously Fnatic has been strong.
I'm gonna have to put China at 4th. I actually think China can do some good damage. I think I wouldn't be too shocked. It would be a bit surprising, but I wouldn't be too shocked if they were able to, make a run all the way. But overall, in average, I mean, let's just be real, right? DRG, another Ascension team, one of the 2 Ascension teams that have come in, that's really trying to get their footing. And while FPX has looked better and better, I love them for their craziness, but they do get a little crazy sometimes. Yeah, and then EDG, obviously, I think they're a little bit rejuvenated, but never really got over that big hump on an international stage ever since that first run at Masters Tokyo. So I'm gonna go with Americas in third. Which for people who saw my power rankings, you're probably thinking, what in the world? This guy is all over the place. But again, for average, I think America's in third. Personally, I just don't know what form to really expect from Leviathan. Again, another team that, like, obviously the peak is as high as it ever could be, but how would they match up against international teams, especially when, a lot of teams are probably going to bring out at least some micro changes in their play and their setups and their comps, things like that. And then I would say, G2 really, really sturdy, but among the 12 teams, I don't know if I would rate their ceiling as high, right? Maybe their average is slightly on the higher end, but their ceiling probably not as high. And I rate 100 Thieves very highly, but again, I feel like they're in a bit of a wider spread. Then you have, the second best region at Master Shanghai, EMEA. I'll give you guys a little bone. Throw you guys a little bone. EMEA, I think, you're just sending really, really reliable teams for EMEA. But then, it doesn't really matter because, like, Pacific is obviously the strongest region going into Master Shanghai. So it doesn't really matter how the other regions rank. I'm not so sure.
Which team would you say is the biggest threat to your region's success at Masters Shanghai?
I'll pick Mahara Thieves or Leviathan. I think versus teams who are playing aggressive and who are like to make a lot of duels versus EMEA region, it usually shows that we are struggling a little bit versus this type of play styles. Like on last Masters, when our region played versus Sentinels and Loud, it was pretty hard for us to play versus them. And it showed that maybe we are not ready for this. Maybe it was because they also was the new team with the rookies and they didn't have enough experience, but right now they have. So I think, it should be probably in a regions. Maybe also I would say the Chinese region in terms that they are really playing aggressive and they can sometimes catch you off guard because you're not expecting that. You're not expecting that the guy can maybe push on Breeze 12 out to 12 times the tube. And he can be every time here and you need to every time check it if you don't have any abilities. So I think like these regions can be really bad versus our playstyle.
I'm going to say that 100 Thieves and Fnatic are the biggest threats. Funnily enough, obviously, both coming in as the top seed. But I think the fact that they're slightly different. So for 100 Thieves, I think the fact that they are so adaptable, that they seem to have found this recipe already in the first half of the year, where they put all their players in comfort positions, and therefore they're so adaptable in game. Like their mid rounding seems to be so good, and I don't just mean like the IGL mid rounding, but overall just like player movements, etc. How they're communicating with each other and how they react to each other and what's happening on the map. For Fnatic, it's Fnatic. I mean, what more do I have to say? Like they've been the bane for Pacific teams through and through in the past, and you see what they did, at the playoffs for EMEA. It seems like they've really regained their strong suits, right? And whether they can bring up the weaker parts again or not is the big question. But you've got insane clutch potential, right? They're not players, and they've all played against the craziness of Paper X. They've faced some of the best aimers in the world, so it's not like they're gonna, get caught surprised by the tempo or the aim or anything like that.
Yeah, I think it's Paper X. I don't know.
That's fair.
I don't know how the matches will go if they're going to be able to, if any of these teams will be able to play Paper X, but like I don't think that on stage a player like Icy has ever, or a team like G2 as this type of core has ever played against a team like Paper Rex before, right? So this is going to be a very very interesting one for them.
I think the biggest threat to the region's success would be Pacific. But obviously, that doesn't mean that Fnatic won't do well against China, or even a team like 100 Thieves won't do well against China. I think it's just Pacific, with the two teams of Gen G and Paper X, can hold their own, whether it's in Swiss stage or playoffs. Because I imagine that we'd see Gen G making it through the Swiss stage too.
Who is the player you most fear from another region?
Leo. I feel like that's a bit of an easy answer for me. I think I could easily pick Leo as one. Like if I had to just pick only one player, it would be Leo, no doubt.
I think if I say Aspas, right, is gonna be obvious answer.
Yes.
Because, yeah, so I think I need to choose. I think I will choose Korea, right, from 100 Thieves. I think maybe a lot of people don't underestimate him, don't understand how many things he's doing for the team and how dangerous he can be, especially when he's in the zone, when he's feeling the game.
Yeah, funny enough, it stays within Paper X, but I think it's just Forsaken as well.
Yeah.
Forsaken is from watching him play also in Madrid and all the highlight reels that he's able to put through and what he's able to do after something and Jing does their own thing. From A to Z, the whole roster for Paper X kind of like makes me think about 100 Thieves in a different way of like they're all kind of like great assets that makes a team who they are.
Yeah.
But Forsaken just adds so much more with the flexibility that he has on these agents.
I think Boostio is not afraid to be able to call against teams like China teams that might be doing some weird stuff to come up with stuff. I think Boaster might naturally overthink it, but I think that he's composed enough to deal with it and like has good ideas. Or Mini and Elmer Putty will give him a good indication on what to do. But I think Ryan's actually for Heretics. I think just having a Silver player that is very good at looking at opponent setups, coming up with their own lineups on like Silver, shock darts and stuff.
How many teams from your region will make it to the Masters Shanghai playoffs?
No, you know what? I'm just gonna say it. I think we're gonna have 3 teams in the playoffs. I'm gonna say it. No, I have faith. I actually have faith.
I feel comfortable in saying that FPX would make it through Swiss stage. Obviously, it depends on who they run into, but I think against all these opponents that they can give it as good as they got.
I think only one team will make to Fnatic. Like, I can't say who is gonna be exactly because I think it's gonna be already the random after the first games. Depends on which opponents they're gonna have. So it's really hard for me to say it's gonna be Heretics or Footballist. But I would say I will put on honeymoon period. I will put it on Heretics. They're using this every time, so I believe in this.
How did you know? 3. How did you know? How did you know?
Which team from your region do you have the most faith in and why?
100 Thieves. Again, just no joke. I just don't feel that they currently have weaknesses right now for in the team. If you ask me that question from like week 1 and week 2 of like stage 1, I was like, yeah, Crowcells can't frag anymore. He needs to play a jet map. He needs to, be posted up with an op or something. But this guy's rifling. He's standing up. He's vocal. AU's making comms as well. Like and the comms are actually like good for 100 Thieves of like how they know how where they are around the map in the chaos and then how to set up each other and how to set up these crossfires and do the protocols of like, hey, I'm ready to swing, I'm flashing for us. They haven't really, I mean, they all do it at a very high level for VCT teams, but it just seems that the way that they're able to build in cohesion for 100 Thieves, they're finding way more success in that trade factor than other teams would, at least in North America, or at least, sorry, in the Americas for now.
I think it's again the obvious, right? The answer it's a Fnatic. There is a lot of things that happen with them, and I don't think that they want to prove it to the others that they're still the Fnatic. I think they wanted to prove it for themselves that hey, we're still here. Yeah, it was a rough start for us, but we still can make it. So you better to scare us. So yeah, I think they have a lot of chances to do it.
I was leaning more positively to FPX because it's like, despite us like losing in some cases, us like I'm part of the team as well. Um, Despite the region, like I guess, like for FPX especially, they lost, but there was so much like promises. Like you're getting the first kill with like mechanically, we're matching up to Loud and Carmine Core. We're just not very good in the adjustments mid to late round. But the fact that I'm already seeing Berlin sort of say the same thing of just be like, we are matching these teams, we're beating them, and like mechanically, China is alongside the rest of the regions. It's just those protocols, it's just those reactions that leave a little bit to be desired. And, you know, we don't need to worry about Fnatic for doing that, right? Like if they are playing on Lotus and they get pushed A, they have like 12, a dozen, maybe even hundreds of different variations of what they can do to go towards C, to go towards B, to fake in certain stuff. FPX and EDG and other China teams don't really have that in the same level. But if EDG can play in the same way that they played like grand finals, where it's almost like Paper X-esque, where just they seem to just bullshit rounds, they just make unwinnable situations winnable through clutch plays, just good decisions. EDG do stuff like that, they could do really well. The problem is, I just think that they can do really well in grand finals where the pressure's on them to perform, but when it's like a elimination game from a Swiss stage, like against Loud, and it doesn't start well, that confidence just disappears, and it feels that everybody gets quiet. Like they live by Kung Kung's high energy, but they die by Kung Kung's low energy, depending on how well he's doing.
Paper X. There's your answer.
What is the biggest factor for teams in your region to succeed at Masters Shanghai?
I would say we need to play around their weaknesses and to do the UNA for their weaknesses, and for Fnatic, find out what they're missing comparing to before to have a really good start. For Heretics, I think Wood can play a lot of different roles, right? So the
Yeah.
duelist is not gonna be for him something new, and I think he can replace or play maybe in different way how Minibu play for the team, and he can bring his team a lot of space and entry kills. And the footballist, like, it's hard to say. I think if Sinet is gonna be in his form when he's hitting like the can with operator like every shot, I would like
Yeah.
to see if they're gonna play versus together, like Chamber from Sinet and like the Jet from can with operator, to see these duels. It's gonna be really
Yeah.
interesting if it happens. And if Sinet is gonna be in that, I I mean, he's already in a good shape, right? But he's gonna be in his prime when it was like in 2021 when I played against him, and it was
Yeah.
really hard to play versus his operator. I think it's gonna be really interesting for them.
You know what? The biggest factor going to Master Shanghai for Gen G might just be Charon needing to gain a little bit more confidence again. I think he looked a little shaky, during stage one. And the reason I say Charon is just because like everyone else is such a veteran that sure, like Meteor had a bit of a weaker stage one, things like that. But I'm not too concerned. Like I think T1 needs to smile. I'm just gonna say it. They look like so, I don't know. They look so stressed out all the time. For Paper Rex, they need to stop having a permaban. Figure out what Jing's going to play on Breeze. Stop banning that map. Because, my gosh, if they get to the grand finals again and somehow they're just at a disadvantage in the draft, even though maybe they have two bans, I'm going to be upset.
Like if DRG want to do well, everybody needs to be like plus differential in like KDs. Everybody needs to be winning clutches and finding good fights, not getting like pounded, basically. For FPX, I think it's life. Life has been one of the best duelists in China. I'd say the best up until like the grand finals, where his form dropped off. Granted, other players like stepped up, like I said, Lysor and even Autumn in cases, but I think they really need Life to find the opening for them in some cases. And it's just like Kung. I think both of them are very similar in that sense of like they're very confident, but they lose confidence in themselves. I can imagine they're the kind of player that goes super quiet and plays super scared. So I just want to see Life sort of prove that he belongs on the same level as Kung when it comes to how the duelists are considered, because they've both got crazy fan bases. But I think Life needs to just do a little bit more consistently to be on the same level that Kung is.
The biggest factor, at least for G2, I think it's, again, the return onto the stage. They haven't done that since 2021, the first one for IC as well. So I think the one with the best experience and the most recent experience on the big stage for that team is Leaf when he was playing lock-in with C9, right? So that is probably going to be the biggest one, just to get used to that setting. A live crowd. It's probably going to be a packed arena at the same time too. And this is going to be a return on even when they played Reykjavik for the Guard, that was an event that didn't have a crowd, right? That was COVID days.
Yeah, I think you might be right. Yeah,
so the whole team is going to be going through that. So
yeah,
that is going to be an interesting factor to keep an eye on, to see how G2 is going to do around that type of environment. The biggest factor for 100 Thieves is, not having that workout, that cohesion that we were talking about. I think that's the whole low-hanging fruit analysis that I could give you on that one too, because they're just looking so good right now that if anything, like any type of small mistakes could still happen and they'll still be fine. But if it goes down to them just literally not hitting shots anymore or whatnot, I think that's the biggest thing that's going to make them lose any type of series. I mean, any team, of course, but if that's going to be the predominant factor, then that's the only thing that's going to topple them down, because they're so good on everything else currently for 100 Thieves when I'm looking at this team play. Leviathan, I think, to do well, biggest X factor we always talk about at the same time. It's the players themselves, being Asmas as the first one. And I just want to see a little bit more. I love to see the success of these players, but I feel that I haven't seen it yet, or enough from the stage one. And it's the common text, and I want them to perform very, very well, because that's going to help. That's going to help into their confidence as well going into stage 2 and even for the rest of the year.
Do you believe it is beneficial for your number 1 seed to have skipped the group stage and gone straight to the playoffs?
There's a really interesting question, because if we see how it was before, if the team is already in playoffs and the team who came from the group stage, they're usually more hyped, they already play the arena, they already used to that atmosphere. And the last example, I think of this, it was in kickoff when Karmine Corp played 5 games, or I think they played 5 games, or they play 5 games, and they play versus Fnatic, who played 1 game.
Yeah.
And they were already used to everything, and they didn't feel that nerves on the stage, and I think it was a really, really big advantage for them. So, in my opinion, if you pass the group stage, you have a little bit advantage versus the team who didn't play on arena with this crowd and they just came to play. But it's really a trick one, because you're not safe already, because you can't build in playoffs, but on the other side, you can have this feeling on the arena, and it makes you much more confident on the stage.
I think the break does them well. I think the break would have benefited FPX more, if they had made the playoffs, because they can see what the other teams are running in Swiss stage when it comes to meta related stuff, and so it gives them a chance to cook up things. But at the same time, I think the FPX team could benefit from the reps of performing well.
I think for Paper Rex, it will benefit them, but I think for a lot of teams, it's not necessarily a benefit. I would almost say that actually for teams that, maybe aren't as experienced, even just as a roster, like your individuals could be veterans, but if you're not as experienced, etc., I think the pattern we've seen so far is, while it's more grueling, and sure, you might get eliminated earlier, you're probably bettering yourself as you go through. So if you're really trying to lift the trophy, going through the Swiss stage might actually be even better, because you're getting more reps in, you're able to identify the mistakes, things like that.
I think it's going to be fun. Yeah. At the same time, it's like it's double elimination going into playoffs, right? If I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I think it's very beneficial for 100 Thieves at that point. I feel that the games that we've been playing to, at least in our regions, to try to make it to Shanghai, and once we've actually qualified, you still have to play a lower finals BO5, then the next day a grand finals BO5. It's nice for them to have a little bit of that break, and
Yeah.
and with that time that you have by skipping group stages, again, when you brought out the jet lag and the time differences, I think 100 Thieves are already there right now. So not only can they boot camp and practice, they're also having much more time to adjust to the time.
Which two regions do you believe will make it to the final?
So I think that, yeah, like Piprex and Gen G, I still believe in. It's really a question of me for now. It's like, would it be Fnatic for EMEA in the final, or would it be like 100 Thieves? And I think, again, I don't think that 100 Thieves are as fundamentally flawless as Fnatic, but I do think that I could see a 100 Thieves Piprex / Gen G final more than I could see a Fnatic one.
I think it's gonna be Fnatic and EDG, because when it was looking in São Paulo, it was the Brazil team, it was loud, and it was Fnatic, so they already have this experience before. Maybe they can repeat it, and right now it's gonna be EDG, who is in Shanghai, and this Chinese team, and they're gonna play versus a Fnatic, and they can do the same. I would like to see that.
As much as I want to be biased around Americas, I think it's going to be Americas and Pacific in the grand finals. I somehow feel we're going to get 100 Thieves versus Paper X
Okay.
as a grand finals.
I have to be very careful with the powers that have been given to me, Tom. I have to be very careful with the powers that have been given to me. I am going to say I think there's going to be two regions in the final. And I think it's going to be America's, just because, I don't know, my stocks for 100 Thieves is really high. I find their games very, very exciting. I think there's a lot to take away from their games. So I just like the style that they're playing. I guess that's the best way to put it. So because of that one team, I'm going to say America's versus Pacific in the grand finals.
Who is winning Masters Shanghai?
As I say, it's already Fnatic and EDG.
Yeah?
Fnatic already has a lot of titles, so maybe it's time to share it with the China. First title in
Okay.
China is gonna be insane.
I think it'd have to be Paper X. I genuinely feel like if Pacific wants to win an international event, it has to be this year.
Gen G just won MSI for League of Legends. Gen G's winning again in China. Gen G's going to take Masters Shanghai. It's going to be the Gen G dynasty. That's it.
100 Thieves. America's going to win playoffs. America's going to win Shanghai. Let's go, baby!